Hi, this is our Data 375 podcast about ethical issues in database access and usage. For this podcast, the group members are going to be Olivia, Michael, Danielle, and Ashley. And in terms of ethical use issues in database access, we will start off with issues surrounding transparency with Michael.
As you may have noticed through a lot of online databases and such, they're really transparent, which I'm so happy for. But I did find a website recently that did actually have a list of online databases. One of them is the fact that on it you can actually see who owns each database. So I popped up agriculture because I didn't expect to see agriculture ones. So looking through it, there was one that owned by the Canadian government, one owned by the University of Toronto. Only private ones I've noticed, astronomy. Yes, I know, that was surprising to me too. It's like, okay, why astronomy? But looking into it, it seems a lot of the ones that the site at least gave us was ones that said, oh yeah, this is just, we're showing pictures of the galaxies like billions of light years away, and it's all owned by one guy. And a lot of the medical stuff goes back to PubMed and such, but or the National Institute of Health inside the United States. A month or two ago, they always had a big banner on the head that says, the government is shut down. We may or may not run.
Yeah, like they would shut them down because of like they didn't have money because the government wasn't paying them.
Oh, okay.
So would you say with this then that the government's technically the consumer?
I think so, actually. They just decided that everyone else was they just decided that everyone getting access to it was more valuable than just them having it.
So then how do you think this would relate to students?
Students are not given much options in low income countries. Institutions do not have that access. Students have to either look for resources when really there is not much resources. And they either have to just give in to either an article that might not be applicable, might not make sense to what they are looking for. And unfortunately, that's the cost that students have to deal with. Accessibility matters, equity matters. When it comes to academic databases, it's like that completely is gone.
I think you're drawing from the paywall documentary. You remember that one scene where they were talking about how they saw like so many students in one particular major, so they thought, oh wow, it must be very popular, it must be whatever. But it turns out that's the only one where students had an abundance of access to actually like write their papers. Because like all of us have some university level experience right now. Could you imagine writing any of your 4,000 level papers and not having access to any of your databases?
It would have been literally impossible.
Yeah,
very difficult.
Danielle is right in the sense that like think about, because there's universities in third world countries, there's students all over the world, some in poorer countries and from poorer institutions than what we're used to. So when they don't have access, like when they can't pay Elsevier, what happens, right?
Right.
Something that I had saw during my research that kind of is similar to this is like the concept of data sharing being more for utility and equity.
Yeah, even like other than paywalls, there's this lack of money, especially in those countries that just don't have those funds. It shouldn't just be North America.
Yeah, it's like the concept of community in itself, right? But it's literally the like human nature of just communities. Something that I had found in my research was this concept of the FAIR principle. And FAIR is like an acronym. It's findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that is like how you can determine whether or not information is shareable, I guess. But it has to have those four qualities to be considered almost kind of like how open access is, actually. We saw this during COVID, but sharing information during situations like COVID helped create doors in the like brutal walls that make up our society, like things like the social political world, dude, even economic stuff. This kind of allowed information to become less of a weapon and more so a tool,
Cool.
right?
Yeah, I can
Wasn't it
see
like the scientists that were researching COVID, like the actual DNA of the virus, released the DNA strain as open access for anyone else felt so inclined to work on it?
Yeah, so they actually did do that. It's a little like I'm not sure exact numbers, but there was roughly 64 COVID-19 databases that were created to help share the information as
Wow.
they were studying it.
Price on a bike, that's a lot.
Like that's including
It,
databases and platforms, but just like across the world though.
hang on, but
Mhm.
are we talking databases like in the academic sense that were like actually
Oh
like
yeah, no, it
legitimate?
it was like studies what they were finding from looking at the disease, symptoms of
So none of the
people.
conspiracy theories counts towards that 60
I
something,
mean,
right?
probably not, considering this was an academic paper I found this in, but like, who knows, right?
Yeah, fair
Because
enough.
like it's like essentially when you say database, I was like, so there were what, 64 of them you said?
Give or take. Did you know though that there's like they did data on this? Half of the organizations that were like putting their research into these databases,
Mhm.
only like half of them actually needed consent from the actual like patients.
Ew.
Right?
Damn.
So like obviously
Oh,
it's they did state
There's
it
your
does
ethical
state,
concern right there.
right? That's still like that's like half the organizations.
yeah.
Like, because that is definitely a violation of ethics. Like, I
Yep.
know COVID was a big deal and all that, and technically our topic is dealing with the ethics of,
Yeah.
to be fair, it's ethics of access, right? So, in
Yeah.
order to spin this that way, the people that had like their medical files used, even against their like without consent,
Mhm.
do they get to have access to all of that information, or was it in the end put on like paid for databases, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because like
Yeah.
the patients that are written about in those studies, do they get to have access, whether they got consent or not?
I mean, you can't have accessibility, I guess, if you don't know about it
Yeah.
in a
Yeah. And the
horrifying way.
next thing you see it online, right?
Like, yeah, there's no identifiable data that came out, but still, there's got to be someone out there who was like, ah, this might have been me, right?
So other side of the coin for Danielle did like the cost of access. I'm doing when I was trying to research just access and ethics in general in academia, a
Mhm.
lot of what came up for me was the cost of being published, especially in regards to open
Oh,
access journals.
yeah.
So
Yes.
like
Yeah.
apparently because like being published, because you know there's formatting, there's editing, there's the prestige of the journal, even if it's an open access journal. There's being cited and like having that H factor thing. And also there's the peer review process. Someone has to pay for and get it
Dude,
out there
I
too.
honestly thought that you just put a paper in and you got paid. I did not think
Yep,
you had to pay for
that's what
it.
we all thought. But no, it turns out, especially in open access journals, like because it depends on the type of journal, it depends on the rules. According
Mhm.
to like I think 3 of the readings I had cited,
Right.
um, one academic article published by like one person writes and wants to be published could cost like $4,000, right? And so in a subscription model, it doesn't cost any like what we have now, like with Elsevier and all that. It doesn't cost the author anything. It doesn't cost the student using it anything. Uh, but the institutions paying for access get bled dry. And that
Mhm.
$4,000 would come out of SATE or something like that. Whereas in open access, because they don't like the consumer doesn't pay for it, they aren't charging SATE or the institutions anything for it. So that $4,000 comes out of pocket of the researcher if they
Ugh.
want to share that knowledge. Which I don't know, at least in my opinion, like if we go back on something important like COVID being researched and all that, is it really ethical to charge the person trying to save the world $4,000 to save the world? Nobody in academia has any money.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just look at the cost. Like, teachers don't make money, man.
But with the cost of just articles and resources, that seems such an unfair cost for institutions, especially if it's the new update information, specifically for nursing, right? You need the most updated because everything changes.
How would you guys end this discussion in a way that we could define ethics in a sense of information?
I guess weigh in. Do you think databases and academia and all that is ethical now? Do you think
Was it ever ethical?
Exactly.
You know, it was kind of ethical at the start. When you get down to it, well, they allowed people to actually see other people's work instead of just being stuck defending it by like guilds fighting each other.
Before capitalism, when it was just information being shared for the good of society, it would have been ethical. Maybe.
Yeah.
Could you imagine what it would be like today if we didn't have capitalism? Everyone would be so smart.
Without the
Not
competition.
Really.
I still think the world would have been better off had it just been like a human sitting in a mud pit, half the people foraging for berries.
Damn you, Henry Ford.
Hey, he at least tried to make it so that his employees could afford the cars they were building.
The final question that I could maybe see us having is, who controls databases?
Honestly, from what I've noticed at least, the people who control databases are the big governments or big universities or people with a lot of money to be able to afford. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just how it's always been. It's just people with the most money, people could have the most control. That's just always how it's been for any database.
Then why do people keep submitting stuff?
This raises another question, because you know how like there's the whole idea of like the separation of church and state?
Yeah.
What if there was a separation between state and academia?
I feel like governments do not understand the difference between Western and just countries that do not have the access. There is just so much that they don't understand. I feel like there's just so much focus on their fame, on their money, getting their students specifically what they want, excluding everything else.
To be fair, that might be a power move. I mean, the more you exclude, the more you put barriers in front of the third world countries to access these things, the more you're keeping them oppressed, keeping them down as a third world country. They can't exactly advance if you don't give them the know-how to advance. So, I don't know, like, maybe they understand perfectly well it's a power move.
I guess that's not very ethical now, is it?